Kicking things off here in the women's flyweight division with Andrea Lee and Miranda Maverick, starting with Andrea Lee. She had a phenomenal start to a UFC career, winning her first 3 fights. Then will finally suffer her first loss to Joanne Wood in her fourth fight. After that, things kind of got a little bad for Andrea. She would then lose her next 5 out of 7, making her record 2 out of 5. And in her last fight versus Natalia Silva, she suffered a bad decision loss. In that fight, when I was watching the fight, you could just kind of see Andrea never felt comfortable in that fight, nor could she get her offense going, making the fight easy for the judges, giving that all 3 rounds to Natalia. Moving on to her opponent, Miranda Maverick. She also will have a great start to a UFC career, winning her first 2 fights. Then will finally suffer her first loss in her third fight to Macy Barber. She then, after that loss to Macy, she then will bounce back, winning her next 2 out of 3 fights. After that impressive performance, unfortunately, she suffered a bad unanimous decision loss to Jasmine Jasudavicius, which would then take Miranda Maverick out of the top 15. She was able to bounce back after that devastating loss and with the impressive performance against Priscilla Castuero. Moving on to our next fight that I'm going to be talking about, it's going to be in the men's heavyweight division with Marcos Rogerio de Lima versus Dustin Taffa. Now, I feel like this is going to be a very exciting fight because we got 2 brawlers, 2 heavy-handed brawlers who are most likely going to go in there and try to kill each other. If you know anything about Justin Taffa, you know, for me, he don't make no bones about what he's trying to do to you. And Marcos Rogerio de Lima's kind of similar style where he ain't making no bones about it. This Saturday, I believe, in that heavyweight fight, we should be treated to a fantastic fight. I do expect a knockout in that fight. Okay, talking about Marcos Rogerio de Lima. He would have a good start to his UFC career, winning his first 2 fights. Then he will eventually suffer his first loss in his third fight to Nikita Krylov. After that, he will then put on a impressive career thus far where he'll win a couple fights, then he'll lose a fight, win a few, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And his last fight up to date before this Saturday was against Derek Lewis. And let me tell you, I know that's a fight he'll like to forget. He suffered a terrible, nasty knockout to Derek Lewis in that fight. The guy even went on camera and said after that loss to Derek Lewis, his teeth came loose. Like all his teeth were loose after that fight. Moving on to his opponent, Justin Taffa. He wouldn't have the best start to his UFC career. He will drop his first fight. Excuse me if I pronounce his name wrong, but Yorgan de Castro, I believe how you say his name. He will lose to him. Then he would then go 1-2 in his next 3. But after that rough patch to start his career, Justin Taffa would then put on a series of wins, winning 3 in a row. And his last fight versus Austin Lane, beautiful, phenomenal performance by him with the knockout of Austin Lane, a brutal knockout, ground and pound. Like I said, you know what Dustin Taffa's gonna do. Like I said, he showed you that in that fight with Austin Lane. He's here to punch hard and try to knock you out. And like I said, for you that did see that fight, we all know how brutal that knockout was of Austin Lane. Moving back to the women's side of things, in the women's strawweight division, Amanda Lemos versus Mackenzie Dern. And let me tell y'all something. When I first heard about this fight, I'm like, wow, it's going to be a really, really fun fight to watch. both stylistically, they're gonna have it's gonna be a fun fight. There's nothing else I can say about that. But I did find out that Mackenzie Dern was a fill-in for Tatiana Suarez. I do not know why Tatiana Suarez put out this fight. So if you do have any information on that, you go ahead and leave it down in the comments. So Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Lemos, like I was saying earlier, crazy fight. I believe it's gonna turn out to be. Stylistically, I would suppose Mackenzie Dern possibly wants to keep the fight get to fight to the ground because she is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Amanda Lemos is such a phenomenal striker. Now for Amanda Lemos, I expect she wants to keep this fight standing. However, if the fight does go to the ground, I don't see Amanda Lemos being too nervous or too scared to be down there. She does have a well-decorated background too in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Amanda Lemos, very, very nasty when it comes to the way she strikes. Very patient but aggressive striker at the same time. Like, she does a very good job of not overextending, exhausting herself. But when she finds a beat on what her opponents are doing, or or whatever the case may be, like I said, she turns it on. Very vicious fighter, looking for a knockout. I think it's going to be a very fun fight decided between these two ladies. Styles, clash of styles. A little bit more about Amanda Lemos. She would start her UFC career with a loss to Leslie Smith, and after that, she'll go on a phenomenal run and win her next 7 out of 9. With her next loss coming to Jessica Andrade in a very heartbreaking fight, a fight that she knows she could have won. She was winning, makes a silly mistake. Her opponent Jessica capitalized on it. Then that was fight. Then she go on to win her next 2 fights, which are 2 high-level strawweight fighters in Michelle Waterson and Marina Rodriguez in both fights. Wow, what a performance from Amanda Lemos. That would then prompt her to get her title fight against the current champion in Zhang Wanli, and unfortunately she will fall in that fight to Zhang Wanli. Watching that fight, you guys just give your credit to Zhang Wanli. She's just that good of a fighter. Like, Amanda gave her everything she could have tried, but it's just Zhang Wanli's just that kind of a fighter. A little more about Mackenzie Dern. She had a phenomenal start to her UFC career with winning her first 2 fights. Then she will finally take her first loss in her 3rd fight versus Amanda Ribas. After that fight, she would then go on a phenomenal run, win her next 6 out of 9, and she would lose her last fight to Jessica Andrade in terrible fashion. It wasn't a good fight for her, so I'm sure this Saturday she wants to make up for that in her fight versus Amanda Lemos. Moving on to the main card, we got a middleweight bout between Anthony Hernandez and Roman Kopylov, and I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I don't know much about Anthony Hernandez. From what information I gather about him and the way that I watch of him, he's a good fighter. He's game. He's there to bring it. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, but he's willing to stand, and he's gonna need that on Saturday because his opponent Roman Kopylov, that's what he wants to do. He wants to stand, strike, in your face, in your space type of fighter. So Anthony Hernandez is going to need that striking background. And like I said earlier, I don't know much about Anthony Hernandez. So when Roman Kopylov does bring that style to him, I don't know if Anthony's going to want to keep this fight on the feet, or he's going to want to quickly try to get this fight somehow to the ground where it's probably more comfortable. Now with Roman Kopylov, like I was telling y'all, he's a striker mentality guy. He's in your face, trying to for me make you uncomfortable. He don't want you any air type of fighter. And stylistically, both fighters kind of have a Roman keep his hype going, and Anthony he wants to shut that hype up. He wants to show the from the whole fight game that hey, he's here to stay. So this fight has a Fighter Night written all over it. Sorry to see this fight on Saturday. A little more on Anthony Hernandez. He would start his UFC career not to a good start with the loss to Marcus Perez, but after a fight against Marcus Perez, he would then bounce back and win his next 5 out of 6 bouts. A little more about Roman Kopylov. He would not have the best start to his UFC career, dropping his first 2 fights to Carl Robertson, and I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his next name, so forgive me if I pronounce it wrong. Albert Duraev is how I believe he pronounced that. After those 2 losses he had to those 2 gentlemen, he would then go on and with an impressive 4-5 win streak, making his UFC career currently at 4-2. Dick's next fight in the men's bantamweight division, so super fight, possible title contending fight between Merab Dashvili versus Henry Cejudo, former champion in the flyweight and bantamweight in the UFC. I see this fight going multiple ways, but one of the ways I do see this fight going is Merab controlling the fight due to Henry Cejudo's long layoffs, because he was retired and comes fights Merab's guy and Aljamain Sterling, but since then again been inactive. So this his second fight back from retirement, and Merab Dashvili, if we saw the fight, his last fight against Peter Yan, one hell of a fight, in my opinion, his best fight inside the octagon. And we all know Merab, his style. For me, he doesn't get tired, cardio king. He's in your face. For me, he doesn't really have a style, but he just in your face, grinding you out, punching, kicking, constantly getting clinched. He's just constantly active. And Henry Cejudo, like I said, when I seen that his fight back from retirement versus Aljamain Sterling, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. For me, you could see definitely a lot of rust. So it would have been nice to see him get back in the octagon a lot sooner than right now. But he is a former champion, two class world champion, former Olympic medalist. So he could show his vintage Henry. That's totally possible. If he does show his vintage Henry, I do expect him to try to get octagon control, establish his strike, and then quickly go to the wrestling, due to his wrestling pedigree. It should be an exciting fight this Saturday. A little bit more about Merab Dashvili. His UFC career did not get to the start that he would have liked. He dropped in his first 2 fights, and excuse me if I pronounced his name wrong, Frankie Saenz, that's how I believe he pronounced that, and Ricky Simon. After losing those 2 fights, he would go on a crazy run, winning his next 9 fights in the UFC. And his last performance against Peter Yan, like I was telling y'all a little earlier, it was a phenomenal performance. If y'all don't know who Peter Yan is one of the best bantamweights right now in the UFC, former UFC champion, and the way he just completely shut him down, Peter Yan just couldn't get nothing going. Like, you could see in that fight when Peter Yan was fighting Merab Dashvili, much really. Like, he's looking to the sky. He's looking towards his coaches. He's looking everywhere. He's looking for answers because Marab was just that good that night. Damn near was able to stop him, but Piran's a really tough opponent. So it went to the referee scorecards and judges scorecards, and Marab got the unanimous decision win on that fight. A little more about Henry Cejudo. He'll have a phenomenal start to his UFC career. Winning his first 4 fights, then he will get a fight against the current champion at the time, Demetrius Johnson, dropping his first fight to Demetrius Johnson. Then he would then lose a consecutive loss to Joseph Benavidez. After those 2 losses, Henry Cejudo would go on another impressive win streak, giving him a rematch against Demetrius Johnson, and he was able to win that one and become the new UFC flyweight champion, and still continue to win and actually move up a division and fight for the bantamweight champion. I believe that was against Marlon Morales. He would be able to defeat Marlon Morales to become a double champ in both the flyweight division and the bantamweight division. And Henry Cejudo's last performance, like I was trying to tell y'all earlier, didn't really like it much because, you can see the ring rust because he came out of retirement. Like, he was in retirement for about 4 to 5 years, I believe. And, he was fighting a primetime Aljo, and you could just see Henry Cejudo he didn't look like himself. Too much ring rust. You could just see why as the fight was happening. Then for this Saturday, that's what I don't like about this fight is after that Aljo fight, he had another over a year layoff, and I don't like that. So we'll see how he performs this Saturday. Next fight on the main card, we got Jeff Neal versus Ian Machado Gary in the welterweight division. Now, this fight has a lot of violence written all over it because of the styles that we got coming in here. Like, you got Jeff Neal, who for me I'm a striker type. For me, he lets that vibe get out there. Like, hey, I'm a striker. I like to go in there and try to put my opponents out. And if you see in Gary's last performances especially with the striking, it's just been very, very, very nice, flawless. So I do expect this fight between Jeff Neal and Ian Gary to be a type of fighter night, type of fighter performance of the night, type of fight. So I'm excited to see this one on Saturday. A little more about Jeff Neal. Phenomenal start to his UFC career, winning his first 6 fights. Then on his 7th fight, he will suffer his first loss versus Stephen Thompson. Then he would then lose a consecutive fight after that loss to Stephen Thompson to Neil Magny, but then he'll get things back on track and back on a win streak. He had a very, very impressive fight against Vicente Luque, fellow welterweight fighter. In my opinion, that's the best fight Jeff Neal has had in the UFC thus far. He showed how great his striking can be, because if y'all know much about Vicente Luque, he's also a very phenomenal striker in himself, but the violence that he brought, just the devastating punches, blow after blow he gave Vicente Luque, and that's actually the first time Vicente Luque has been stopped in the octagon. Now, after that fight, I felt like Jeff Neal wanted to carry that momentum, but he fought a very tough Shakov Rachmanov, which he would then lose that fight. But if we go back to when that fight started, I think Jeff Neal even kind of came at that fight all wrong. Like, because he will end up missing weight by 5 pounds. And I know Jeff Neal, early in his UFC career, he had weight problems due to an illness he suffered. But, that's been way past. So I wouldn't blame this weight miss on that illness. It's clear if you watch the fight, if you know who Shakov Rachmanov is, dude's a straight killer. So I'm pretty sure Jeff Neal, I'm not saying he did, but kind of wanted to come a little heavier, so give him a better chance of winning that fight. But unfortunately for Jeff Neal, it just didn't turn out that way. So he ended up losing his last fight to Shakov Rachmanov, which was a fucking war. A little more about Ian Machado Gary. If y'all don't know, he's actually Irish. He's trying to be the next. I wouldn't say he's trying to be the next Conor, but he's trying to carry the Irish legacy behind Conor McGregor, which he has kind of, in my opinion, kind of really did that, because he's undefeated, 13-0, 6-0 in the UFC. His two latest fights, in my opinion, has been what we could expect to see from Ian Gary, because his fight against Daniel Rodriguez, a seasoned veteran, the way he picked him apart, like there was a few words said before that fight even started, and Ian Gary kind of basically what he told Daniel Rodriguez is basically what happened. Like, he's like, you're not gonna touch my striking. I don't care what you think, for me, blah blah blah. He said all that, and he went in there and he stopped him. Like, that's the worst I ever seen Daniel Rodriguez look in the octagon. And kind of the same thing kind of went over with that Neil Magny fight. When Ian was fighting Neil, he kind of talked his mess. And if you don't know by now, like I said, he's kind of like the notorious Conor McGregor, where he likes to talk. Like, he lets his opponents know, like, you ain't this, you ain't that, you ain't doing nothing. I'm sorry, but everything you think you bring to the octagon ain't gonna happen. And like I said, since he's undefeated, he's kind of backed it up to this far. So I expect Ian Gary something similar, telling his opponent Jeff Neal, you can't do this and that. And I see him trying to back it up this Saturday. I got very high hopes for this fight. I think it's going to be a very good fight, very violent fight. I think both men are going to come out there and lay it all on the line on Saturday. Let's see what happens. The next fight I'll be talking about takes place in the middle division in our co-main event, Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. Now, this fight has a chance to go either two ways. Really great or really bad. Really great because we got two phenomenal middleweight fighters in Whittaker and Costa. Two seasoned, very game fighters. Bad because of Costa's layoff and Whittaker's last performance, which came in a devastating loss. A little more about Robert Whittaker. He would start his UFC career on a good start with winning his first two fights. Then he'll suffer his first loss to Court McGee, then suffer a consecutive loss to Stephen Thompson. Then what he does after that is just phenomenal. He would then go on a 9-fight win streak, earning him the chance to fight for the belt against Joel Romero. Now, I'm not quite sure, but I don't think Joel Romero ever held the belt in the UFC, so I think it was a vacant title fight, like no champion entering the fight. Both fighters gonna fight the fight, then whoever wins becomes the new middleweight champion. That's what I thought. That's what I think it was. I'm not sure. Like I said, I never heard of Joel Romero ever having a belt in the UFC. But Robert Whittaker would end up winning that fight for the belt, end up defending it, but then he would soon face a phenom in Israel Adesanya. And for those who watched that fight, we all know, well, it wasn't a good fight at all for Robert Whitaker. Adesanya had his way with him. He damn near knocked this dude out twice in one fight. So Whitaker would lose that fight to Israel Adesanya in a devastating fashion. He would then put together another couple fight win streaks, then get the fight again against Israel Adesanya. Didn't go his way, but far better. And the second time against Izzy, far better than that first one, because this one would go the distance and he will end up losing to judges' scorecards. After that, he will again go on a good streak of wins. Then his last fight to date before the Saturday was against Dricus du Plessis, and at first I thought Whitaker had a chance to win that fight, because going into that fight, I believe Whitaker was the better fighter. And listening to the guy talk before the fight happened, he sounded very confident, sounded very ready. He's talking about my camp was good, everything was perfect. So fight happens. Kind of surprised how it turned out. Whitaker did not look like himself. Just terrible performance on his part. Great performance by Dricus du Plessis. Let me not take anything away from him. He came in there phenomenal, looking great in that fight. Took care of business, took Whitaker out of there, and yeah, so we're gonna see how Whitaker responds this Saturday. A little more about Paulo Costa. Phenomenal start to his UFC career, winning his first 5 fights. And his 5th win versus Yoel Romero. For those who remember that fight, what a crazy, violent, just everything you want to see in two dudes who practice that style of fight and just expect everything you expect to see. They gave it to us, like good pace, high volume, crazy punching power that both fighters absorbed and somehow survived. So kudos to those two fighters in Costa and Yoel Romero. Crazy fight. That fight will earn Costa a title fight against then the current champion Israel Adesanya. And let me tell you something about that fight versus Izzy. I feel like Costa came in too confident, not giving Izzy any kind of respect, like no kind of respect. Like, dude's champion, I know you feel confident you beat him, but not to give him any type of respect. I think ultimately that's what caused Costa's downfall. Him not giving Izzy any kind of respect. He came in there thought he could do whatever he wanted to Izzy. You could tell as the fight started, none of his tactics were working early on. You could kind of tell he played it off by showboat and stuff like that. But if you look beyond the showboat, you can see that boy was in there really thinking like, oh, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm kind of lost in here. And he kind of saw Izzy took care of business, took Costa out. Then Costa will have a layoff after that fight and fight Marvin Vettori. Suffer a split decision loss in that fight, but in my opinion, I thought he should have won that fight against Marvin Vettori. Great performance by Marvin Vettori, but I thought Costa did enough to win that fight. Another layoff before he fights Luke Rockhold, and a layoff here again before this fight on Saturday. And that's probably the only thing I don't like about this fight for Costa going into the Saturday's fight is the amount of layoffs since that Izzy loss. He's only had 3 fights in about, I think, 3 or 4 years. Like, that's just not enough. That's just not active enough. You got to get more in there. You got to, for me, there is a such thing as ring rust. So the layoffs, don't like it, but we'll see this Saturday what Costa has to bring. Final fight of the night in the featherweight bout for the featherweight champion between Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria. And wow, what a final fight. I think this fight's gonna be absolute fireworks. We got two great UFC fighters here in Volkanovski and Topuria. We got a well-rounded fighter in Alexander Volkanovski, and we got a elite striker in Ilya Topuria. And for Ilya Topuria, you might as well just call dude's hands bricks, cause he puts them on you, you gonna feel them and you gonna fall. A little more about Alexander Volkanovski. Crazy phenomenal start to his UFC career. He will win his first 12 fights to start his UFC career. In his 8th fight in the UFC, he will fight then champion Max Holloway. What a crazy fight by both fighters. Volkanovski was able to edge him out, get the win on that fight, then will go on to defend it 4 more times before he would then move up to the lightweight division and fight Islam Makhachev. And let me tell y'all something. He didn't win that fight against Islam, but when you look at the tail of the tape going into that fight, everybody, including me, thought he was gotta get destroyed. Like, I'm thinking he's gonna move up to 155, fight Islam Makhachev and get either submitted, knocked out, something crazy. Nah, Volkanovski came in there. He took it to Makhachev. He even stole a round or two in that fight, and you could tell you in Makhachev's face that he was surprised that Volkanovski came with that type of game, and like, okay, dude really came to fight. Now, after that fight, what Volk does next, not the next immediate fight, because he would then fight Yair Rodriguez, defend his title against him, but his next fight against Islam after that title defense in the featherweight bout, he goes back up to 155 to challenge him again. Now, I don't like that decision at all that Volk makes here, for the simple fact that he wasn't even supposed to be the fighter fighting Islam. It was a whole different fighter, Charles Oliveira. So, unfortunately, Charles suffers an injury in training camp, has to pull out like 2 weeks before the fight. UFC come calling Alexander Volkanovski, and bruh agrees to the fight. Just off of that, you already know dude tripping. Like, no, you don't fight the level fighter you about to fight in 2 weeks. And even worse, seeing how that fight turned out, if y'all watched it, bro even admitted that he was drinking every day before he got that call. I ain't crazy, I don't know what is, but he'll end up losing that fight terribly. His only UFC stoppage, he's never been stopped in the UFC. We're going to get knocked out by Islam Makhachev. So, Volk admitted some personal things after the fight. So, hopefully, bro's head is right, and he's prepared for this to defend his title in the featherweight division on Saturday versus Ilya. A little more about Ilya Topuria. Bro's undefeated, 6-0 in the UFC. Phenomenal start in that UFC career. Like, wow, it's just crazy. I want to talk about Ilya's rise to where he got himself today, fighting for the belt on Saturday. One fight in particular I want to talk about against Jai Herbert. Now, why I want to talk about this fight is it showed 2 things, in my opinion, that kind of quality fighter Ilya is. One, if y'all do remember that fight against Jai Herbert, there's a fighter named Paddy Pimblett. Now, at the time, I didn't know Paddy that well. This is when Paddy just started in the UFC, but I didn't know of him because I didn't really know him that well. So him and Ilya in fight week will actually get into it. Now, me, I didn't know that Ilya fought at the time, because this would be my first time actually seeing Ilya fight in the UFC. I didn't know at the time Ilya was a featherweight fighter. I thought he was a lightweight fighter because Paddy's a lightweight fighter. So when him and Paddy got into it, looked like a bar that was at something like that. Ilya and Paddy arguing over in the bar. Paddy throws object to him. According to Paddy, it was a hand sanitizer bottle. So I'm thinking that's supposed to be the fight on Saturday between those two gentlemen, just to find out that they both had separate opponents that are going against. I said Ilya's opponent was Jai Herbert, and in that fight, when fight starts, Jai Herbert gets the crazy start on Ilya. He damn near knocks bro out. Ilya's in deep waters at this point. You gotta bite down hard on your mouthpiece, willing to go out on your shield, which Ilya does, and somehow he survives just to reverse that how that fight went, and to not just win that fight, but then to be the one to actually knock out Jai Herbert in crazy fashion. One of the best knockouts I've seen in that weight class in the featherweight division. Then he would go on, continue his win streak, get the fight against Josh Emmett. Beautiful performance, masterclass. Like I said, we already know he's a phenomenal striker. Going against Josh Emmett, the way he was able to tear apart Josh Emmett. Like, if y'all don't know who Josh Emmett is, that's probably one of the dudes you never want to fight ever, just because of the power he brings. Like, he got enough power to hit you one time, and that might be the last time you get hit by anything in this world. Like, Josh Emmett is that powerful. So for Ilya to stay in that firing range the whole fight, utilize his striking ability to just. If y'all saw Josh Emmett how he looked in that fight, he looked ugly. Like, bro, face was all beat up, bruised up, bumped up, everything. So that fight would then earn Ilya the title fight this Saturday versus Volkanovski. Like I was saying earlier, I expect a crazy, phenomenal fight from both fighters. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens on Saturday.